when we talk about trust and empowerment, it is collaboration, it is psychologically safety space, and it is empowerment. And that is, for me, very important. First manager I had, he also taught me you need to know everything as a leader. I strongly believe that this is, bullshit. It doesn't work. You don't know everything.
This special episode of Sports and Outdoor Mentors was filmed on the main stage of ISPO Munich with one of our favourite previous guests, Markus Hupach, CEO of ARION. The theme of our discussion was the future of leadership in a volatile world. We discuss the power of empathy and trust-based leadership versus command and control style leadership, decision-making in challenging times, and building resilient and agile teams. I really hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you do, please leave us a review or comment, and if you're not already, please subscribe.
Why do you believe that in times like we are now, which is a challenging market within the outdoor and the sports industry, why do you think some businesses and some leaders are maybe reverting back to that more traditional, that more command and control style?
Well, it isn't an easy time, right? So we know there are many, many balls in the air we have to juggle, and every day there is something new kicking in. So therefore, I can understand that some leaders fall back into the old straps to say that's a legacy piece. They know we have done it always that way. They are fearing change in their leadership style, and they tend to go where they were good at. And that's the reason why a lot of people are falling back into command and control, not knowing what the impact can be if you revert your style and do it differently.
One of the things that I observe in the conversation that I'm having with companies today is that I speak to some CEOs and some chairmen of businesses that believe actually that really tough, direct, almost micromanagement approach is the only way actually to really deliver results, which personally I don't believe, but what's your perspective on that? Do you believe you can deliver good commercial results with a more empathic, open, transparent approach to leadership?
Well, there's always a subjective feeling to it and an objective one. And thanks God, there are a lot of research papers out there which really support the trust and empowerment approach, showing, for example, if you look at the Gallup engagement survey, you clearly see that the modern new style actually drives productivity, and actually companies are much more profitable when they embed this kind of leadership style into their business.
That survey for me is a really powerful tool in itself. I mean, it identifies that within the European workforce, and here I'm talking all industries, only 13% of employees are engaged in their role. And that should be a pretty scary number for anyone. I think what's actually even more scary, though, is that 16%, so more people, 16% are actively disengaged. So these are those people that we've probably all worked with at one time that you could call them toxic or a bad influence on others. So there's more of those people than there are people that are actively engaged. So yeah, I mean, that's such a horrible low number. How can we deal with that? How can we kind of move that forward?
Well, I think for me, the first big surprise always is that companies often, they are not tracking NPS, which is actually an easy thing to do, and you can do it quarterly. It's just one question in a way, and you get the heartbeat of the company. You know what's going on there, and that's for me the step number one. And if they do it, then they are neglecting the results and not looking into that and trying to understand what is the root cause of all those results. And I don't think that they see the impact of all those disengaged people or partly engaged people for the business at the end, because on the reverse, we clearly know that people who are really engaged, they are much more successful, much more efficient and productive for a company, and much more engaged. So they are driving actually the business and the results.
I would encourage anybody to look up this survey, so you can find it on the Gallup website. And they survey thousands of companies and hundreds of thousands of employees. But what they also do then is they look at the performance of the companies in the top quartile of engaged employees versus the bottom. And just some staggering statistics here. So companies in the top quartile in terms of employee engagement are 23% more profitable, 18% higher in productivity, and 10% higher in customer loyalty. So for me, these are such clear and staggering facts. I struggle to understand why there isn't more effort and resource actually put in from businesses to focus on employee engagement and improve that. Maybe given your experience of leading, large and also smaller companies.
Well, I was lucky to work in companies which focused a lot on trainings for employees per se to start with, right? So to understand what are different methodologies out there which I could use, right? So I'm filling my backpack with tools that I can use to lead and work with people, that I understand what are the options out there rather than just one way, that I'm actually influenced by my manager, maybe who has a very traditional style, but I want to realize, okay, there is something out there which suits me much better as a person. And I think for companies, we need to guide them. Change is per se painful. No one likes change, right? Because I know what I have, I know which direction I need to take, so that's great for me. And then it's hard to go into that change process. But if you do that as an organization where change is deeply embedded in the culture, and the leaders lead by example, right, are at the forefront of that, and then are finding those change maker in the team, and then you have multiple people who are actually driving change, so you can implement it in the culture of the company. And I'm not saying actually it is one fits all, right? It's not one style fits everyone, but I think there are definitely a lot of opportunities between the far left command and control and the stuff on the right side. So, and that's something what companies and leaders need to find out.
During our regular episode of Sports & Outdoor Mentors, so episode 17, you discussed the need for leaders to be able to take decisions quickly, decisively, especially in challenging moments. So what advice would you maybe give leaders in doing that but also trying to keep kind of balance in terms of listening to the employees, the team, also taking on board data and insights from the market? So how do you find that balance between the listening, the data, but also the need, like you said, to move and not get stuck?
Well, what is clear, if you trust and empower or have a positive leadership style, that does not mean that you keep it all easy and a lot of balls are there and you need to make decisions. Fact. The way you make decisions, that's actually the interesting one, because I'm biased, right? I have a view on something and that might be okay. But if I ask 3 colleagues around the table, they are coming from very different perspectives. So somehow I need to use the power of diversity to come to the best decision. Well, you can actually establish like a decision tree that you say, okay, there are small decisions to be made that can be done between 2 people, or there is a bigger decision that needs to be made that needs to be done in a certain manner. So the methodology, the way you come to decisions need to be very clear. Bringing the facts then on the table and then quickly move on. I found once the pizza teams, the 2 pizza teams from Amazon, which means actually that no team should be bigger than the amount of people who can be feeded with 2 pizzas only.
Well, that for me would only be 2 people then.
Well, that's a different story we can talk about. But in a way, I like it because you need to be careful that you're not slowing down the decision process or the agility of a company or a team to make decisions. So including the right people for certain decisions is absolutely important. So for us, a decision tree to know, okay, that's a bigger decision, we need to involve certain people is really important. But then also having, for example, maybe morning check-ins to say, these decisions are coming up, what are your point of views? 15 minutes, very quick. And then retrospectives after a week or 2 to evaluate what worked well, what didn't work, what needs to be done differently. I think these are the things that could be easily implemented in organizations.
I just want to pick up on something you said there about kind of evaluating what is working, maybe what isn't working after a decision's made. How willing are you, or would you recommend people to be to adjust and adapt that decision based on the reality of what's happened? Because I think a lot of people sometimes are, okay, I've made a decision, we're going this way, and we're not going to change. Because I made that decision, it's the right decision, I don't want to detour from that. But if you're getting insights and data that's maybe suggesting maybe that needs to be adjusted a little bit, what's your position on that?
Well, I think it's all about allowing failure, right? So I think there's a Google study out there as well where they had two teams. One team did not talk about their failures. One team actually highlighted all the failures. That team, of course, because they highlighted the failures, made more failures, obviously, but they were at the end much more innovative because they learned from those failures, while others were actually just putting it underneath the carpet. And if you never learn from failure or mistakes, you can't be better in the future when making decisions. So for me, of course, decisions or making a mistake, it can be a big thing or it can be a small thing. So that needs to be clear up front, right? Which decision can be made by what group of people. But start slowly implementing or integrating people, that they feel really part of the decision process, and then going out and improving it over time. Highlighting again what worked well, what didn't work so well, what can we change, what new information do we have on the table.
So it makes complete sense. I think a lot of what you said there also makes a lot of sense if you're all together in a physical environment, you're all in the office. What about when you're maybe leading teams on an international basis, where you've got people in other countries, in other time zones? Obviously, I know we all have digital tools now that enable us to do that much better, but I think that brings in another layer of complexity and difficulty for doing that.
Well, I hear that all the time, and I think for me, to be honest, people are looking for reasons or even excuses. I worked in different environments. My team at ASICS was fully remote. They lived in or worked in all countries. Now with the tech team, we are working remote, so we're a lot digital. We have a lot of digital conversations, and actually a decision can be made also remote. Right, so that isn't an issue. You can do a 15-minute morning online check-in, also digitally, right? So we know that. We learned that at least throughout the corona pandemic. So that shouldn't be an excuse.
So I know that when you're building a team, you really value complementary skills and really fostering resilience within teams. So again, given the current challenging market, what's your approach to do that, to build resilience within teams, but also to build a good collaborative environment? Because obviously when you have people with different backgrounds, different skills, maybe initially it's difficult for them actually to collaborate because they are different. So how do you do that? What's your approach?
Well, maybe start with the first. For me, I'm a believer in strengths-based work, right? So I'm a believer of the Gallup Strengths Finder, for example, which shows me what I can do quite well and what shows me as well where I'm not really good at. And when I'm working on my strengths, I can deliver. I succeed, I'm engaged, I drive, I'm positive. And what is true for me is true for others as well. So in my team, I don't need 5 times a Markus, right? So I need a Markus, Irina, Christian, Dan, and all the others to have complementary skills and the best team setup you can get. So that's, for me, actually step 1. I don't believe that teams today are set up like this. So the Thomas principle, right? Thomas always hires a Thomas.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore, right? So you need diversity in those teams and skills. I know in projects I can be very innovative and very creative, but when it comes to the details, really the details, then I know I need to drag in someone who's much, much, much better. And when he works or she works on his or her strengths, then they will perform. And it helps me. And that is the same for, let's say, team building. The second part was...
around building resilience.
Exactly. And then when it comes to resilience, for me, the first thing is self-awareness, knowing exactly, okay, where do I stand? What helps me? Bringing my mind in the right space and knowing exactly where are the energy drainers, which I can ideally remove. But then also on the other hand, I mean, we have a lot of stress situations, and you can train your resilience muscle, right? So stretching always the boundaries a little bit more, getting a little bit more out of your own comfort zone. And I'm not talking about teams or my employees, I'm talking about myself, right? How can I actually train my muscle, my resilience muscle, get every day a little bit more out of the comfort zone? So that's the starting point. And then you need to create this awareness. You need to bring in moments where you can push the brake and say, for me, for example, when I feel, okay, my brain is full, I can't work anymore, sport helps me a lot, right? So I need to go into the nature, into the forest, go for a run, go for a hike, whatever it is. I feel immediately how I release that stress. And that's different for you maybe, or for someone else, but you need to know how can you build these kind of information, or how can you release those kind of stress moments.
You mentioned at the start there that you've utilised, I think, StrengthsFinder. You were talking about the tool. So I feel a bit of a red thread here. There's kind of data, used in a lot of what you're doing. So is that something that you use with your team as well, so that you're really kind of building a broad understanding of how people sit from a personality and a behavioral point of view?
Absolutely. I think first, again, it starts with yourself. And I think if you're a leader and you want to manage a team, you need to manage yourself first. You need to be aware of your own behaviors and so on. So that's the starting point. And then you roll it out, and we do this Gallup's StrengthsFinder with the entire team. And then we are also looking at the power, the strengths, but also the blind spots. Where do we potentially have blind spots in decision-making, in the way we are working together? Where would we actually need to add a certain skill set or so? For us, it is very important, and complementary teams, again, is also part of the survey shows clearly that those teams are way more successful.
Yeah. And now this is a little bit of a selfish question, but when you're looking to bring people into that team, are you assessing potential new people to come into their team that using the same tool to see how they fit from a point of view of their personality within the team?
Well, I can only invite everyone. The Gallup's StrengthsFinder can be done online. It's 69 euros, I guess, and you get results immediately, and they're really, really powerful. To do the exercise with the entire team, you should drag in someone who's a Gallup strengths coach in a way, that she or he is able to actually guide you through the results and guide you also through the commonalities and the blind spots. But yes, we are doing that. That's very important exercise, and well, not only for business life, but also for private life. Yeah, you see certain patterns in your strengths profile which are definitely helpful also for private situations. And you see, I'm a strong believer in that one. It's really not costly, but you also need to drag it up from time to time and see what it is. And I know it's not only the only tool, the only analysis tool which you can use. I mean, for me, the cultural differences are important as well. So culture training is also important. At ASICS, we had 60 different nationalities. Now in my management team, we have 5 different nationalities. And I can tell you, I had lately actually almost a mini clash with one of our colleagues because he's from India. And in India, you hardly give feedback. And definitely not feedback that might be a little bit critical. And he was almost getting furious, and I didn't understand it. So I had to drag out my culture map again and looked at, okay, what is the huge difference between Indians and Germans when it comes to feedback? And actually, the Germans are on the far left, while the Indians are on the far right. And then I understood the clash. And now I can do it differently and approach certain situations in a different way. It was a mistake done by me. I looked into that, and I need to improve for next time.
So in the podcast, I've interviewed now around 40 senior leaders, CEOs, chairmen, etc., within the sports and outdoor industry. And you are definitely one of the most open in terms of your own strengths and weaknesses, and I would say to the point of sharing vulnerability. And I know that I think personally that's something that I really appreciate, because you feel like, okay, you're an open book. I think a lot of people feel quite uncomfortable maybe about sharing that. I'm the leader, or I'm the CEO, or whatever. I need to show strength, not that I'm wrong or maybe weak or don't know in a situation. So how would you encourage leaders that are maybe a little bit reluctant to share that vulnerability to do that with their teams?
Well, I have to laugh because the first manager I had, he also taught me you need to know everything as a leader. I strongly believe that this is, bullshit. It doesn't work. You don't know everything. So that's the starting point. And vulnerability in front of teams is sharing your journey as well, sharing your failures, your mistakes, your doubts when it is. Why is that so important? Because you build trust. And trust is the number one thing when it comes to team management. If trust is not available between people in a team, you will never, ever be really successful. And for me, it is important to stay in front of the team and yes, also share sometimes that something didn't work well or that I was doubting, I was struggling, I had a bad day, I had doubts. It builds trust. And yes, it is hard to stand in front of the team for the first time. I remember that years ago. And I felt like, okay, can I say it? But actually they come back and say, Markus, that's great. So we are not the only ones who are struggling, maybe. We see that you are also struggling in a certain situation, for example. The question is, how do you get then up from point A to B, right? So as a leader, you need to be visionary, you need to get the team behind you. So you also need to show them, hey, this was a challenge, and now we are going that direction, and you need to bring the team behind you.
So if you are able to share some advice to maybe future leaders of the sports and outdoor industry for how should they lead? What would be your approach to encourage people to lead in a volatile world?
Well, I think the first thing is for me, and the hashtag lifelong learning is maybe a little bit outdated, but it's still very true. So, which means you need to stay open to training and education and build the next things you have to do, right? So if it's a constant thing, it doesn't hurt anymore because you're just in that spiral and you're learning new stuff. So that's something very important for me. Looking at statistics, the World Economic Forum clearly says, I think by 2013, soft skills are so important for leaders. So we should build them as well, and that's what future leaders should do. But not only future leaders, what I should do, you should do, Christian should do, and all the others should do as well. I think that's very important, getting out of your own comfort zone and trying to make this work. The other 2 cents on this one, I'm a great believer in growth mindset, and I'm also a great believer in reframing. I don't know if you know the methodology of reframing things. So it might be that the island will sink, but you could also reframe it and say, what can we do with the island in a way? What can be done out of that? And that this reframing methodology can work for any other issue, situation we have in our world as well. So yeah, I think future leaders have a great opportunity to build it, and they should look at mentors, of course. They should look at their own managers, but they also need to identify what is my leadership style, because at the end, what works for me might not work for you, and I think you need to find that out. And however you call it, trust and empower, or positive leadership, or whatever it is, transactional leadership, that doesn't matter. Don't give it a name, but have a toolbox of great stuff. And the last advice is, if you want to lead a team and you want to manage people, you need to like people. I've seen too many managers out there who are actually not interested in all the people in their teams. So why would I need to manage a team if I don't want to talk to them? Well, that's for me the number one thing. You need to like people.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Markus as much as I did. A massive thanks to ISPO for hosting us on their main stage in Munich. And a massive thank you to Markus for sharing his perspective on these important topics for all leaders. If you enjoyed our discussion, please leave a review or comment. And if you're not already, please subscribe. Thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon for the next Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode.